All right, we are live. Hope everybody is having a good weekend. I know it's Sunday here in the U.S., Sunday morning, so always a nice, relaxing day. And then, of course, we've got holidays coming up, Easter, and I have noticed, in the last month especially, it does seem like things are starting to get back to normal now that more and more people are vaccinated, and I can go days at a time now without hearing the word COVID, so that's nice. It's not dominating everybody's thought at every moment. So hopefully by the end of this year, things will start to return to some kind of normalcy. I think some things will never change. I think we've all been permanently changed by the pandemic in some way. So, Big Pod, what's up, sir?
Doing fine.
So you playing on your phone?
I'm just replying to some messages.
Oh, that's cool. So have you went ahead and hopped to the latest Ubuntu Mate?
I'm there for quite a while.
Yeah, you've been on the development release for a while.
Yeah, I kind of have to be.
Well, of course. Well, you don't have to run it. You don't have to run it on your main machine. You can test it out on. But I know you. I was asking, are you actually running it?
Yeah. I can be on any distro I want. It doesn't even need to be on Ubuntu.
Right.
But if I'm running Ubuntu Mate, why not run the latest version?
Right. I mean, that's why I have my IC dock with 7 drives in this computer, because I can install any distro I want and actually use it on this machine without it being the only operating system on this machine.
Yeah,
so,
I have Windows for that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'd probably run Windows in a VM, but that's just me.
I need it, and sometimes I do play games on it, so it's best on hardware. So I can rescue anything from it because I can make a USB from it. That's the basic thing.
Yeah. So has anybody done any hopping in the last month? I usually start off with that question because usually somebody has a story that some distro hopping story, or is everybody pretty much satisfied on what they've been on?
So I did a little bit of hopping those days.
Hold on just a second. We've got somebody should be muted.
For hopping for hopping and stuff like that, I got my I got one laptop, my laptops, yeah. And the thing with the laptop is it has 2 graphic cards. So yeah, Nvidia and Intel, right? And sometimes that is a nightmare. I know. We got proprietary drivers and we got open drivers. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But some of the times I need my Nvidia driver, for processing stuff and other things, right? So
well, I've said before, if I had a Nvidia card in a computer, I'm always going to use the proprietary driver. I'm never going to use the open source driver.
That whatever thing is.
Yeah.
Exactly, because it's worth it. So yeah, the proprietary driver worth it. So okay, right now I'm speaking from to you guys from my main workstation, but for hopping I got that one. And this month I hop from Manjaro to Arco to Garuda to Endeavor, I guess. Yeah, and back again to Manjaro. Yeah, because it was very, very specific. I want Manjaro in my i3, my i3 window tiling manager. But I don't know. I enjoy Garuda, so yeah, I install Garuda. And I install. Let me see. I install i3 and BWMS or BW something.
Yeah, DWM. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. And play around a little bit, but I don't know. It was a matter of taste. I prefer again back to my Manjaro.
Well, yeah. I'm probably going to take a look at the recent release of Manjaro. They just had a release, I think, a day or two ago. So I'm probably going to check out their flagship edition, which is usually their XFCE desktop. I haven't actually done a video about Manjaro in a long, long time. I've run Manjaro many times on my equipment, though, and it's a fine distro.
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets a little too much hate from people for not quite being Arch, but it's essentially Arch, and they just do. You know, they hold their repos back a couple of weeks, but what's a couple of weeks? You know, if you've ever run Debian stable, I mean, what's a couple of weeks? I mean, I've had to wait decades for packages to be updated before.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of Garuda, Garuda is interesting because I'm surprised at how many people are running Garuda. I had never heard of Garuda before I'd made that video about it, 3 months ago or so. 3-4 months ago, and it wasn't even on the map. Like I don't think any, but now all of a sudden everybody is running it. I'm really surprised at how fast that distribution is growing.
I heard of it many times. Like question: should I run Garuda? Should I run Garuda? And that was coming from people who never used Linux before. So
yeah,
I guess Garuda targets those people. And,
I would hate to send somebody that's a brand new Linux user to a distro that hadn't been around that long.
Arch-based, and not around long.
Right.
And from Garuda, interesting thing from Garuda. So out of the box, it contains Wish pre-installed. Fish pre-installed. Exactly, Fish terminal pre-installed with all fancy stuff, with all color stuff, and for a lot of people that they are not used to use that or that not commonly use it, maybe that is a very good product, right? Because like it is that's going to be like a middle entry point something distro.
I tried it briefly a month ago, and it hung up a bit on me a few times when installing packages. When the window came up to authenticate, it would freeze on that window. I did about 3 or 4 times, and I used the KDE version, and it's highly customizable. And it went screaming back to Manjaro because I don't like the customizations. I like the plain vanilla desktop that I can customize the way I like it to do. But for some people, it's the right choice. But it used Latte Dock exclusively, I believe.
With the KDE,
And but what they do well is that rebooting with the snapshots. After you do an update, you come into the screen, and I tried that. I booted back, and that was really easy to do. I wish they would put that in Manjaro, and then you got the best of both worlds, right?
But actually, you can do that. You just need to install your Manjaro in BTRFS file system, or your main partition in BTRFS file system, and then use time shift and go ahead. Going to be the same.
Time shift is not quite the same, but it's okay, but it's really not the same.
Well, you could really quickly probably actually get this running correctly through Btrfs or ZFS on every app. They just need to write a pacman hook and then correctly package it up and put it on the file system and hook it up to grab, and you have basically the same with either ZFS or Btrfs on Manjaro, basically on any Arch distro, and on other distros where you can have like such hooks, you can do it pretty easily. It's not that hard to do something like recovery through grub, like you see with the distributions that have native Btrfs support.
Snapper, I think Snapper is used by OpenSUSE.
OpenSUSE, yeah. It's basically a front-end software that controls all that.
And you mentioned Garuda using Fish. That was one of the things that impressed me on that video from 3 or 4 months ago. I noticed that video from 4 months ago too about Garuda. That thing has 200,000 views on it. I don't understand why. That's crazy. That's why I'm shocked so many people know about this distribution I had never heard of. So apparently it's big somewhere. I don't know if it's big. Was it from Indonesia? Well, I forget the country of origin. I'd have
India.
to. India.
Mostly, but they're from all the Australia, Germany, other
So
places as well.
APA base time.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, but I've noticed, though, here in the last few months, I've seen more and more distributions that actually have fish already installed. I've installed 2 or 3 here recently that when I load them up in a VM and open the terminal, I was like, hey, that prompt, that's the fish prompt.
Finally.
They just came out with a new version of Fish recently. So I downloaded it and managed to compile it and get to work. So I've got the latest version on Debian 10. You see Ubuntu is already falling behind in Fish. It's falling behind in Python and other distros too. So what I do, I make app images. That's my thing. So I took Fish and I managed to get it to work in an app image. So on one machine, and then I can just deploy the app image to the other machine. So I have it running on all my machines, but I only had to install it on one and create the app image on it.
And that doesn't cause any problems having your shell as an app image?
No, it didn't. It didn't cause any issues for me so far.
Okay.
On it.
Okay.
I was just wondering how, being in that package, would it be able to talk to everything on your system the way it should?
Yeah, the profile is still in your home.config, so you have all your settings are still in the same place. I can redirect it. You can create any app image you have. You can create, say it's called fish.appimage. You can create fish.appimage.home, and then your settings all go into that folder instead of the system folder. In case of Fish, you don't want to do it because you launch applications from Fish, and those applications would see Fish's home folder, not the system home folder. So you use the system's config files, and it works that way. It works fine.
No. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. Go ahead, Big Bud.
like you could run Fish inside a snap, and since you could create a classic snap, it would work just fine.
Run the terminal as a snap, run the shell as a snap, just snap it all.
I do it with app images. I got Micro as an app image. That was a great find on that. And Micro's written in Go, so it's static, so it goes into an app image very well on it. And I discovered a program called ANSI Filter, which is a command line program that filters out escape sequences, so you can pipe something into it, go through ANSI Filter. When on the outside, there's no escape sequences, so color sequences are gone or thing. So I put that inside the app image. And the nice thing about Micro is you can pipe directly into it. You can do ifconfig pipe micro or dmessage pipe micro. You can't do that with the other ones on it.
Wow.
So, normally you have to install xclip and xl to use the keyboard on your system. It's a dependency. Put that inside the app image so you don't have to do it. And the other thing is quitting. You do Control Q. Now I run it inside a shell inside Proxmox server, sort of like what you were doing the other day, Derek, with the
Cockpit.
Yeah, with Cockpit. And Firefox uses Control Q to quit as well, and Firefox wins, so you can't quit on it. But you can set the bindings on it. It's very easy to change the bindings in Micro, a simple one-line change. So I added Alt Q. So now I can quit out of there.
It's kind of like the problem you guys sometimes see me have when I'm doing things in virtual machines, and I'll hit a key binding, and instead of affecting the virtual machine, I'll kill my actual window manager that I'm in or something.
Yeah,
I've done that a few times on live streams. Matter of fact, I did it on my last live stream. I think I had to restart the stream at least once. I disappeared for about 15 seconds. And the reason I disappeared is I hit the wrong key binding. Well, I hit the right key binding, but it didn't affect the VM. It affected I killed Qtile, so, and I had to come back and start the stream. Yeah, I don't think I told anybody on the stream. I just mentioned, okay, I'm back.
Funny story.
Well, I'm glad Murray is really talking positively about fish and app images, because I had another YouTuber troll me about my use of fish and app images.
Yeah, I see it. I saw it.
He said I must be joking if I was going to make a distribution and have it be app image based. It's like, he can't be serious. I was like, Murray, tell Luke Smith we're serious, Murray.
Well, I'm serious. I've got app image for Firefox. I have created one by hand, and I can clone it. I can take fire1.appimage and clone it, just copy and rename it fire2.appimage.
Right.
In the old home folders, and I've got 2 identical Firefoxes running on my 2 monitors here. And then I take that and copy them to another computer, and I've got this identical 2 running on the other computers too, easily distributed. And so it saved me a ton of work on it.
Yeah. See, I was thinking about making a reaction video to Luke trolling me about the app images, but I didn't want to do it because I'll just let Murray make that video. He can speak on it.
There is a distribution using app images already.
Nitrix?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been doing that for years, which is weird because when they started doing that 3-4 years ago, there were no app images. Like, there weren't that many things packaged back then. Now, of course, you got a lot more people packaging for these kinds of formats. Because you would open their app store, and all it was the app images, and there was like 50 things in it total. It's like, come on, you got to have more software in your software center than this. I trolled them pretty hard for that. Like, I get the idea of pushing something. Hey, I'm pushing app images, but you got to... If you want people to use your distribution, you can't only have app images. Not right now, anyway.
Yeah.
I've got a terminal. I'll bring up a Terminator terminal, and I split into 3 panes. The left pane, I have IPython, and customized from the Python I installed in /opt. Top right hand, I then split the right side in 2. The top right, I have NuShell as an app image. The lower right, I have Fish as an app image. And they're all independent of the distro. So if the distro crashes, I just bring back those app images, and I'm exactly where I left off.
Yeah, I've got the NuShell too. I've played around with it here in the last couple of weeks too. It had a release recently too, the NuShell, because I noticed it had to compile on my system for a while the other day. Yeah.
A new release every 21 days.
Is it?
The next one is due, it's 19 days ago, so 2 days from now there'll be another release. It's on 0.28 right now.
And one of the things, I see so many people talk about PowerShell and using PowerShell with Linux. Guys, just use the NuShell. It's there. It's built for Linux, and it's built in an amazing programming language called Rust, and you're just going to love it. So,
why not use PowerShell?
It's heavyweight.
So it depends. It depends. You can use PowerShell if you have your Microsoft environmental for business stuff. I know. Yeah, that is
well, yes. If you obviously if you're tied into all of that, yeah, right.
But if not, why in a heck you're going to use PowerShell in your Linux machine as a shell?
But, sometimes you get people that move from Windows to Linux and, they miss the strangest things. Like, I miss the PowerShell. Come on, man. Have you heard of Bash? You really should try it out, right?
Well, PowerShell is in a different way, set up in a different way. And some people actually do like how PowerShell works compared to how most Linux shells work. Since it is object-oriented, at least its scripting system is object-oriented, and those who are heavily into object-oriented languages, those actually quite like PowerShell and wouldn't trade it for anything.
Well, yeah, I mean, the creators of the NuShell, I'm sure, are fans of PowerShell. That's why they created basically a clone, or, well, it's not really a clone, but, it kind of reminds you of the PowerShell a little bit.
Which was the terminal that you said, Derek? The new terminal.
The
new terminal. The Rust terminal. The Rust language terminal.
The shell is the NuShell.
Sorry.
NuShell, I believe is the name of the package in Arch. When you launch the NuShell, though, I think you just type NU.
That's right.
Okay.
Right. But the package to go and install is NuShell, all one word, NuShell.
Okay, NuShell.
Consists of a single binary and about 10 support modules to it. It's 10 plugins on it, and no other dependencies. So it's pretty much self-contained.
I did a video about it a couple of years back, showing some basic stuff with it. It's pretty neat. Most of the functions, the commands you enter in it will display like tabled format information. So everything's in columns, and you can basically almost grep out things from these columns, but not really. You don't have to use grep. It's all kind of built into the shell itself.
That's right, yeah. And they, I was going to say, I'll come back. Could blank out.
Like you could run a ls command, and the ls command will have everything divided in columns, like the user and group and the name and the date and all of that. And then you could do the ls command and then tell it to sort by name, and it'll sort, and it'll do the ls command again in that tabled format, but this time they'll be sorted alphabetically by name, or sort by name reverse, reverse alphabetical order, or sort by modified date or whatever. And it's just really neat the way, because you would have to use so many other bash commands to do something similar like that, right? You have to do grep, sed, awk, sort, and a million things to, if you were going to sit there and manipulate all that data like that.
You can use it. I use it for the path statement. It shows you your path in a vertical column, nicely aligned and colorized. Instead of echoing $path, and you get it all in one line. You get it down and distributed. There's another one you can do it for your disks, with your disk allocation and space and stuff, all in table format. It's almost built in. You just string a couple of commands together. Yeah, it works really nice for it.
Now, you've almost convinced me, Murray, to switch from Fish to NuShell now.
Not quite.
It's not there.
It's not there. It's going to be another year.
Not this time.
Yeah.
They've got a programming language now. You can write functions in it.
Oh, you can script with the NuShell.
And it's got variables, but it's very early days, right? So
yeah,
just came in, I think, the second last release.
Yeah, that's one thing I haven't got into with Fish, is trying to script using Fish. And I know people do it because I see people online asking about, how to script with Fish and opening issues on their GitHub and everything like that. And it looks really cool, but I just can't wrap my head around some of what's going on, because I'm so used to Bash and just the way the Bashisms. And it's just everything with Fish is different. Like if you compare a Bash script and a Fish script side by side, they're not even remotely the same thing.
Well, that's because you're used to POSIX style shells.
Right.
Basically.
Yeah. You got to relearn. Well, not relearn, because it's not like you relearn things when you learn a different language. It's not like if I learned Python, for example, I'd have to unlearn Bash, or, move to Perl. Well, I got to forget about Python. It's just something different.
Once when I installed my FreeBSD for my storage here for my storage purposes, I had a very obscure or very, very hard time playing with TCSH.
Yeah,
that one. What the heck is that?
I don't know. The BSDs are a little weird because.
Oh yeah.
I mean, in Linux, everybody at least is on Bash. If they're not using Bash, they're at least experimenting with some of these more modern shells like Fish and but. Like OpenBSD, their default shell is the corn shell, KSH, which, who the hell uses that thing? Why is that your...
I don't know. I changed the shell for ZHS again, so now I'm playing good with.
I mean, it's cool to play with this stuff. I'm just surprised that so many of the BSD operating systems use things like CSH and KSH, and I'm assuming the reason they do that is because they could not use Bash or Fish because both of those are GPL'd, and the BSDs are probably not wanting to put GPL software in their operating system.
Because they're smart.
Right.
Or native C++ deployment. No, native C++ compilation. Exactly.
And binaries aren't compatible with
That maybe
GCC,
is one of
GCC builds.
Mhm.
That could be because actually, technically speaking, even C isn't a full to assembly compile language. You require certain binaries to actually run those.
Exactly.
Even so, that means that it's interpret language no matter what it is, and that's why you need a C runtime.
Yeah.
That's why if it is but only if it is dynamically compiled. If it is statically compiled, all that is already inside. And C and C++ allow static compilation. If you statically compile, it should be running anywhere. But then again, you're then distributing binaries, which is another problem they probably don't want to deal with.
Right.
The nice thing about Go is from the get-go, it's always been statically compiled.
Yeah.
They're adding, I think they've just added or about to add the ability to create dynamic modules as well. Rust is always dynamic, and it's always about 7 dependencies, and they're pretty universal, like pthread is everywhere on that.
Yeah.
It has libc, so if you're using an old libc, you might run into trouble. But in effect, it's pretty well statically compiled.
Rust statically compiles its own components, but the backend that requires some C and other stuff is depending on how you compile it, can be dynamic or static. But on Linux, it mainly compiles dynamically.
And
if I remember correctly.
I use a language called NIM, which is in the same family as those two. It's been around since 2011. It's a niche language. It'll never gain popularity and be used like that, but it has the option of doing either.
He wanted to say meme programming language. It's a meme language, Murray. It's one of those languages nobody really uses, but
but it works out. It's the same language. If you declare a variable and don't use it, it gives you a warning. It's not like Go. It says you're not going to compile this at all ever until you fix that situation. So I kind of like it just for that. Yeah. And Rust, they complain about compile times. Some guy wrote programs in Go and Rust, and the Rust, 30 times the compile time for some stuff.
But also Rust has a pretty complex syntax if you actually want to do everything correctly. If you don't do everything correctly, you're gonna get errors and warnings at compile time that you will just die from.
You know what compiles quickly? Haskell. Everybody should just write everything in Haskell.
I'm gonna say like this. Compile times are least of your worries.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, because most distributions are just gonna package a binary anyway. It's not like most of their users are gonna be compiling this stuff from source.
And the reality is if you're a distribution and you're compiling stuff, because most distributions will compile their own packages. You have a compile farm. You just set 1,000 packages to compile and leave for the night, and it just does its thing. Look at Launchpad's builder farm. That thing has like 23,000 jobs, 48-hour queue, and you're just watching. Okay, when it will finish.
It's the devs that they're concerned about the compile time, not the
right.
Yeah, but I don't know. I never really had a problem with long compile times. Like people are so worried about long compile times. For example, with Linux kernel, that we should be moving to different languages with better compile times. Why? You're gonna compile it, and you're gonna compile it once, and that's about it. It really doesn't matter how long does compile time take. And even Linux kernel, how big it is, doesn't actually take that long to compile, especially if you have a CPU like DTs.
Yeah.
On your CPU, if you let it go at full power, probably like 5 minutes or less than that.
For a kernel, for the big kernel, yeah, I would say, yeah.
For the full
fast?
Linux kernel that you get mainline kernel, that's a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know on the 64 core or 32 core variant of Threadripper, it takes less than a minute.
Hmm.
On both of those, I believe.
Yeah. I haven't compiled the full kernel using all of the threads on it, but I've done some stuff in VMs where I give these VMs 4 threads and 10, 15 minutes, I'm done with whatever.
I once let all 8 threads rip on my laptop,
Yeah.
and it's a laptop, so there's even powerful cores. They're 2.1 gigahertz cores.
Mm-hmm.
They can turbo to 4 gigahertz, but it's a laptop. This won't happen.
I've got VMs of NixOS and I've got a VM of Geeks right now, and I regularly go back and check on those things, and sometimes install new software. Geeks is all source based, and I have that thing. I give that thing 4 threads, and I've never had to wait for anything. So
on my laptop, I was compiling kernel for something. It was some test I was doing, and it was less than 10 minutes on 8 threads. And it was, besides the fact that it was compiling, it was having to run a really, 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 really bloated operating system called Windows 10. Because I was testing the kernel stuff for VSL2 for someone. And yeah, I actually switched out the kernel in VSL2 for something that I built myself.
Hey, could I ask a question?
yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Hey, I'm Bob.
Hey, Bob.
I'm a long-time Unix user, sort of. I've been off Linux for a while, just using Mac OS and Windows. So now I'm getting a laptop to put Linux on, and I just use it for programming. I'm wondering, I've been using Debian. What distribution you guys might recommend? I was thinking of trying Linux Mint.
Yeah, that's a fine choice. What kind of programming do you do?
I do Python.
Python, yeah.
For financial software, I also write Emacs list packages. I wrote
eLisp. I like it.
Yeah,
well, the good thing is Emacs is going to run just fine on any distribution, so all your eLisp stuff is good. I'm assuming you're probably doing your Python and Emacs too?
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, well, Emacs is almost its own operating system, so it really doesn't matter what distro you use. It's your Emacs is going to be fine everywhere. So,
but I use command line utilities.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're wanting.
I'm not as concerned. I used to use KDE. I never liked GNOME myself, so I kind of like something that supports that.
Do you?
If you want the latest version of Python, you probably want an Archbase.
Yeah, that's the only problem is Python gets updated all the time.
Like 3.9, you mean?
Yes.
Well, I can install that separately. I don't.
Yeah, you can.
Pip.
That's what I did.
Right.
I installed it.
Right.
And there exist different things you can do to get it.
But
even without installing it directly.
Yeah, I have been like looking at these different languages like Nim and Zim, is it? Or
yeah.
And V, and seeing, but Lisp gives me such a dynamic experience that it's very hard to go back to these non-dynamic languages. I find, even though I used to be program in C and Eiffel even, and many different languages.
See, that gives me headaches.
Yeah, eLisp is really wonderful once you realize how brilliant it is, where everything's a parentheses.
Oh yeah,
just everything's. I should put parentheses everywhere.
I learned Lisp in college, and it
Curly
really
brackets.
Yeah, there's no other punctuation. Everything's a parentheses.
Curly brackets.
Yeah,
curly
because
brackets.
in Python it's like,
Curly
yeah, do we do the curly braces? Do we do the square brackets? No, everything's a parentheses.
Well, Python's always trying to realize Lisp potential, right? So,
Mhm.
Python
like
is always
every
trying.
couple of years, they add a Lisp constructor, and
Python is trying to do the tab for indentation or for
mhm.
for stuff tab and please put in allowance for curly brackets. That will make it
Right.
so much more easier for me because I was taught in C world. For me,
Yeah, I
it
think
started
that's
with
what happens.
C++
Is you just
and
get
C.
used to whatever.
And then I went to Java. I didn't like Java. I went to C sharp. Guess what? Curly braces are everything for me. I cannot write programs without curly braces. It just programming code just feels
You know, I
ugly
find
to me.
it's just more noise, and like Go, you know, compared to Python, you're always trying to align your braces, and you do have to do it in Lisp, but you know, somehow the way parentheses are used in Lisp is simpler than braces in C-based.
Well, actually, I think since BigPod needs his curly braces, what he could do is he could create his own variant of Lisp, and instead of using parentheses everywhere, just have it all be curly braces. I
Yes.
think that would
Well,
just switch it out.
well, that's why you need a good IDE. You just actually just
That's what Emacs.
Emacs, right?
I have a,
Emacs is the IDE.
it does all the looks it's on its own. I just put a curly brace into C# code and it automatically indents it however I want it.
Yeah.
So
I don't have to.
what's on your videos upcoming? What have you got like in your next 3 videos?
You're asking me, or you're asking BigPod? Okay.
You.
For me, I know for sure I'm going to take a look at Manjaro, their latest release tomorrow, probably. If not tomorrow, the day after. I have been planning some Emacs content. I've got something planned. You'll see it on video probably in the next week. So I know I've got those 2 planned coming up. I was actually taking a few days off from recording. I actually had some sinus problems. The weather's changing. I was having trouble talking earlier in this stream. That's why I had my big cup of coffee and having to drink a little bit to talk here. So here in this past week, I actually was planning on not making any content. The only reason I made any content here in the last 4 or 5 days is because of the whole Richard Stallman free software stuff. I had to make those videos, but I really... well, it's
a shit show.
Did you come out con or pro? I'm just curious.
Con or well, I guess it depends on
the point of vision.
Yeah, well, I was not very pro what Richard did 2 years ago, as far as the guy, he screwed up. He knew he screwed up when he did what he did, and he knew he was going to get fired from MIT. If I'd have been in his position, I would have resigned too, because I'd have been like, you know what, that was dumb. I know you guys are going to fire me. Here's my resignation. Like, I mean, right. But now it's weird because it's been 2 years. And I don't think this is a big deal at all, him coming back to the Free Software Foundation. And I'm a member of the Free Software Foundation. Like, I didn't have a problem with him leaving. I don't have a problem with him coming back because they did talk about it internally. You know, some people were against it.
Right.
A lot of people were okay with it, though. And those are the people that matter, the people within the Free Software Foundation. The entire board of directors at the GNOME Foundation, their opinions don't matter at all. I have a real problem with those folks because they're the ones that kind of spearheaded that letter over on GitHub, and those are all just really nasty people.
Actually, at this point, I actually have a bit of a disagreement with you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that the opinion of greater Linux community matters because Stallman positioned himself and FSF to be something in a position to be representing Linux community, even more than just free software community. So
well, I would say
Linux users also have a say.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody should have a say.
In a
Yeah.
position that represents Linux community and communities within Linux community.
Well, I think these people, some of them, I think, have a problem that they don't have the kind of voice Richard has in the community.
Yeah.
It's some of these, like Neil McGovern and these folks at GNOME, they know. At the end of the day, Richard, what he says matters a lot more than what they say, and I think that bugs them a little bit. But I don't know, do more in the community, or try to be a bigger voice in the free software community. The other thing is these folks like Red Hat coming out, we're not going to support the Free Software Foundation anymore. Well, if you go look at the big donors for the Free Software Foundation, I don't think Red Hat has given the Free Software Foundation any money in years.
Why?
So them saying we're no longer going to, you haven't been supporting the Free Software Foundation anyway. Like, it's just disingenuous. It's not like there were people that were part of the Free Software Foundation standing up and saying, you know what, I'm resigning. I'm not going to donate anymore. That's one thing. But these people,
Europe completely stopped working with.
Yeah, that's a weird one too, because the Free Software Foundation Europe, it's not really the Free Software Foundation. I know it's weird because it's got the name. They're not really. One of their biggest donors is their biggest donor. As far as who funds the Free Software Foundation Europe is Google. And I can tell you the regular Free Software Foundation would never take $1 from Google. They wouldn't care. So they're not the same organization.
It's Europe, so
right.
So Europeans have a bit of a different.
Yeah, it's because there is a Free Software Foundation Europe. There's also one, I think, in India. There's 2 or maybe 3. Yeah, but they're not officially the Free Software Foundation.
They're chapters. They basically spun off from the main one and have a bit of their own.
Because they have been at odds before, especially the European one with the standard Free Software Foundation.
But even many former members are saying that he should stop, but he should stop and resign and disappear.
Well, because I'm a member, I can actually get into the Free Software Foundation forums, the member forums. And so I see the internal discussions going on there, and I can tell you it's not that big of a deal in there.
Good.
Yeah.
So it's
he's done a lot.
Yeah, it's really.
Yeah, but that should not matter. What he's done in past should not in any way
but
matter.
the negative stuff about him is undoubtedly connected. I mean, if you've ever met him, he's he's
not a
he's got Asperger's and there's things just like people with Parkinson's, that you can't particularly control, and that you have to understand.
Well,
but
he does things in public that almost nobody would do, and he's not necessarily aware of.
Well, I've said this many times, and I really believe this. Fundamentally, people never change who they are.
Yeah.
He's never going to change. Linus Torvalds is never going to change. Right. It's like you either are okay with these people being like they are, or you're not. And if you're not, that's fine. Voice your opinion. Especially, I'm sure Richard has rubbed people the wrong way. Like I know, kind of like Torvalds, he had the same problem. Sometimes he went overboard. Like he would get angry and say things that went way beyond what most normal people would tell. And that's why he got in trouble. And I know Richard has done the same thing. Richard has went overboard on some people. And people hold grudges. They're never going, when somebody is really nasty to you, they're never going to forget. He's always going to have these people that are.
Well, the difference between Torvalds and Stallman is at least Torvalds tried to show that he's willing to change.
Well, he did the right thing. You see, he lives more in the corporate world too. He knows how to play this game. Let me go away for a month and get some sensitivity training. Right. That's
show that
right.
That also makes a big difference.
Well, he probably had people telling him he had to do that. And the same thing with Richard is nobody really manages Richard. Nobody can tell, Like,
There's no halfway with him.
yeah.
Zero damage control politics.
Consistent
Right.
in a lot of his stuff, and he
Yeah.
doesn't change that much across time, and that's part of it.
Yeah. So yeah, I will say, and you know, I had to comment on the Richard Stallman stuff just because of being me, and people are going to ask constantly anyway. But I guarantee you, every single Linux YouTuber and just broader tech YouTubers probably already been asked about their thoughts on Richard Stallman, and I have noticed very, 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 very few of them have mentioned anything about it because I think they're scared to death to even talk about it.
Yeah, they're scared as hell of the outcry.
Because 2 years ago, everybody was fine talking about it, but now, like, I think a lot of them don't know what to do with it. And it's like, stay away.
Groups of people
they don't want to be associated with being for or against him because people are being attacked either way. The GitHub letters, there have already been reports of people creating bots to go out and contact these people that signed either one of these letters and threaten them in some way. Like if you signed the support letter for Richard, hey, I noticed you signed the GitHub letter in support for Richard. Would you like us to contact your employer and let them know that you're transphobic? Like people are getting these kinds of.
There are a few reasons I didn't sign.
Not like,
even though I am in the camp, he should leave. But I have my own reasons. I do not agree with the stance or with the how the group is going at it. Even though I think they have the right to do so.
Yeah. Well, I can't.
I decide I will at least until if it didn't go. If pro Stallman guys didn't go super overboard and start going.
No, I don't think anybody needs to sign either one of those letters on GitHub because it's all public anyway. Yeah. I mean, your account on GitHub is public. Just because you're gonna get crazy people contacting you either way, and you don't want to do
for that.
Right.
I have an account for that.
The other thing is the people that belong to the Free Software Foundation, probably most of them don't have GitHub accounts. So I thought that was strange. Why put that letter on GitHub for the one supporting him? That was just odd. Yeah. That was like, put that on, one of the GNU repos or something, or just one of the free software sites. But you don't go put that on GitHub because nobody's going to have an account. Nobody is at the Free Software Foundation.
I do know a lot of people who signed the one against Richard.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people from that list, and actually, I gotta say, I do also know a couple of people who are at least pro Stallman, and I'm gonna say, the people against him have a lot better arguments why he should leave than those for Stallman staying. That I gotta say, the difference in arguments and how well they are presented, even it's not just arguments themselves being well, it's basically a mile difference. Because in the pro Stallman arguments basically boil down to he did a lot of things and he did them really well, even though that really doesn't matter now.
Well, that's not the only case. I've never said anything about Richard deserving, in any video I've ever done. I've never said Richard deserves to be there for.
That's what it is from majority of people.
That's not my stance at all. My stance was, hey, the guy deserved to get punished. He got punished. Now he's back. So move on.
That's the other one.
Right. It's like, that's my stance.
This had some merit.
Yeah, I'm not saying. Yeah, just because he created the compiler and all of that, doesn't mean anything. Right? That doesn't. I don't care about that.
That's the problem, because the argument. There's only one argument for him actually has some merit.
Now, I will say the other thing to avoid on those GitHub letters is there are strange things happening on both letters. Like, it's not all just individual names. Sometimes you see organization names on that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really weird because how can somebody go and do a commit and say, hey, our whole organization is for or against this. I was like, did you really check with everybody? I would be upset if I was on one of those letters.
There's some organizations that did this, and I know someone in one of them. I say which one, and that organization, I truly be told, wouldn't want to be a part of it.
Yeah, I
very, very left-leaning, very woke.
Yeah.
And for that one, I was sure. I knew before it even started, it's gonna be somewhere on that list, and I wasn't surprised.
Yeah.
Because I know the person who is in charge of it, and that person is seriously woke. And I always felt facepalm when I hear that person speak and say stuff, and reading their Twitter is just facepalm.
I mean, if you want to facepalm, just listen to Richard Stallman speak, because his message is literally the same thing every single time.
Yeah. And FSF haven't done.
I mean, come on, man! You've been saying the same message for 40 years now. Can we change it up a little bit?
Yeah.
And
update your speech.
The problem with the Free Software Foundation too is, Richard's been gone for a couple of years, and some people within the Free Software Foundation have been a little critical. The Free Software Foundation has kind of been lost a little bit as far as there's no leadership, there's nobody really steering that ship.
FSF have been lost for years before Stallman left.
That's a big point.
Everything FSF came out with in the last few years that I checked has all been a one giant joke. Sorry to say it, but that was a giant joke, even from people who are not into Linux, who are not part of the Linux community, who maybe use Linux as a part of their job at best, like server admins. They don't know what Linux Foundation is.
The Linux Foundation didn't have anything to do with the community, though. So
they all know what kind of a joke FSF is.
Yeah.
They actually a couple of days ago when it came out, they all asked me what is Linux community going to do with Stallman returning, because that's gonna just we destroy ourselves, and that's just gonna destroy all the merit Linux.
No, we're all gonna come together and coalesce around System D, and we're all gonna agree one day.
They always say that the Linux's best thing and worst thing is its community, because we have the whole discussion about open source versus.
You know what? I think
all that fighting is just basically off-putting.
I think we can negotiate a deal, though, Big Pod. I think here's what we'll do. I'll see what I can do at the Free Software Foundation. We'll get rid of Richard if you promise to replace System D with GNU Shepherd and Ubuntu Mate.
Not a chance.
Can we get a GNU Shepherd, a knit system, and Ubuntu?
There you go.
Yeah.
It's even packaged. I'm not gonna.
No, is it?
I'm not gonna take.
If you need a GNU Shepherd package, Murray can make an AppImage.
I'm not gonna take something that's crazy under my wing. I already have enough.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Work about the book.
I'll do it. Let me pull down some source code and just make a fork here.
Well, the Stallman. The Stallman thing, I've talked about it enough. I mean, I made a couple of videos dealing with that, and to be honest, it doesn't seem to be that big of a deal for, like I said, most people are just avoiding the topic anyway, so people know where I stand on it. Bob was asking earlier about Emacs, the Emacs content I plan to make. I know for sure I'm going to do something about LFeed, which is the RSS feeder within Emacs, because I've really enjoyed that particular program. And I think it's one of the better RSS feed readers on Linux. Okay. So, well, it's not just on Linux. Obviously, Emacs can be run on Mac or Windows too. But that's one of the things, like you can do everything in Emacs, but not all of these plugins and extensions make sense. Like, yeah, MU4E, the email client, is okay. But you probably are going to want something like Thunderbird or Millspring or Geary, for some things.
Have you covered Emacs application framework or I want to ask you about hyperbole too.
Hyperbole?
Uh-huh.
No, I haven't. I haven't really looked into it. So
So, first of all, I would like to make the reference here that I am currently stuck in Emacs and I don't know how to exit it. Because :Q does not work here.
Well, you don't have evil mode installed. It's Control C, Control. Is it Control X, Control C? Yeah.
Where is Control on this keyboard?
You hold down the Z key, probably.
Which one is the Z key?
You don't
know.
You using Dvorak? What are you using? Comac? It may be a different key.
I don't even know anymore.
Did you rearrange the keyboard?
Keyboards should be in the lower left corner.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's my extent of BI knowledge.
Turns out that's caps lock.
Yeah. You don't switch from QWERTY on the same week you learn Emacs. That's a bad idea. So
So I finally got around to actually being able to make Vim functional with Dvorak, by the way.
Oh.
I highly don't recommend learning Dvorak at the same time as you get a blank keyboard, by the way. If you can find a Dvorak key set, you should totally use that instead.
Or
so I gotta go in a couple minutes, but hyperbole is something you could couple with org mode sort of to extend your hypertext capabilities. And the real point of it is to sort of have the machine figure out everything in whatever context you're in, and you can sort of focus on your programming or your text writing or whatever else. And so it has this notion of implicit buttons, which is basically hyperlinks already embedded in your text.
I see. Is it kind of like HTML?
No, more like Markdown, right?
Okay.
Where you have links just based on the context. Like if you put a path name in double quotes and you add a colon and a line number, it recognizes that automatically, no matter where it is. If it's in your programming code or something, and you press a key and it jumps to it. But you can then define your own types of these implicit buttons. This is like one of 10 things that it does. And so like if you want to look up wiki things, right, in Wikipedia or something, you can make a one-line construct, which is an implicit button type, and then wherever you put a reference that has that format, whatever it is you told it to be, it'll recognize it and jump you there in whatever web browser you want. So it's basically like non-programmers can even now create.
It's kind of
functions.
It's a templating engine, nothing more.
Looks like a personal wiki. Is it like a?
Well, that's one piece of it. So it's basically hypertext for your everyday use, but not specific functions like org does. Like it doesn't do to-do management, but it does do contact management.
Is it trying to be a simpler org mode?
It's really it's there. A lot of the features are totally different than org mode. So I say people should use it with org mode. So you can have implicit buttons in your org mode buffers, right? Which are simpler and require much less markup than org mode does. So it basically gets out of your way. It lets you, like if you're in shell mode, right? Mm-hmm. And you do a grep-n, then you can just activate any of those outputs and jump to the source code. You don't have to use Metax compile. So all of your text becomes hypertext, sort of. And everywhere, because hyperbole is global, it's not a major mode, it's a minor mode, essentially. And so it's there, whatever you're doing, whatever mode you're operating in, you get all of this additional capability.
Okay, now I see. Because I was wondering why I would use this over org mode, but it's used in conjunction with whatever mode you're in, org or anything else.
In your background. The only thing, it also has its own outliner that you can use or not use separately. That the difference from org mode is that you're always seeing your, it's like legal numbering. So every heading is always automatically numbered. Wherever you move stuff, it stays numbered, but it has an invisible hyperlink anchor too, so you can refer to any node, and regardless of how you move it, you can jump back there with your hyperlink.
Yeah, I might have to check that out. I got to admit, I've still got so much to learn about org mode. I mean, I play around in org mode a lot, but
It's the
I
same.
mean, org mode, especially once you get into some of the table functions.
Yep.
I'm trying, like the spreadsheet stuff, man. That's tough to wrap your head around some of that stuff.
Yeah, we just added the org tables to the Hyperbole outliner, so that's kind of cool too. Just the more simpler usage, it gives you all that structured formatting, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I will.
Check it out.
Yeah, I will definitely play with that because I do like to play with stuff in Emacs. Sometimes it doesn't work.
Somebody said about a week ago, I thought this was good. Even if you don't use Hyperbole, you should look at the way it's coded, because it does things that are subtle, and subtle is the hardest to do well. I thought that was kind of an interesting.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. Hopefully somebody's got a YouTube video on it. I'll watch a video about it if surely somebody's checked it out before.
Oh
yeah, there's just last thing. There's 2 articles called if you look up Hyperbole Vision Quest, a guy wrote 2 different articles. It's kind of interesting.
Well, I'll bookmark that too for
some reading. So I just want to step in here for a moment and explain to the chat why my camera feed is actually so laggy. It's because I am actually joining this Jitsi call through a Pine phone today. It is a terrible experience, and I highly don't recommend it.
It's fine.
Yeah, Pine phone camera is...
Actually, I'm feeding my webcam into the Pine phone. I'm not using the Pine phone's webcam because the PCB on my Pine phone shorted out, and the camera doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome to Pine phone.
Yep, welcome to Pine phone.
Welcome.
Well,
don't mind me. I only spent about half an hour trying to figure out what was going on.
These things are always kind of tricky if you're joining on a phone, but when you join on a cheap phone, that's just a bad idea. Right.
Well,
I just should have spent more money on the Librem 5.
No.
Same shit.
No.
Same shit.
Stay away. Stay very far away.
Just 3 times the price, but same shit. Believe me.
Yeah, there's another options in Linux phones, right? Right now.
Yeah, there's no. I mean, really, the Pine phone is probably the best company to support. The rest of them, anybody else trying to make a Linux phone right now is probably just a joke. So
I'm using. I know it's not intended for phones. It's still phone functionalities. Work in progress, but I'm testing post-market OS.
Yeah.
I recover my old P7500 Samsung tablet that is one of from 2009, maybe 2010. That it was always what is forgotten by Android, that it exists and they don't support anything on it. Even a PDF reader is not supported, but now I have a proper Linux distribution running on it, and it works very well. They're still working in the phone functionality, but they have a lot of devices working.
I would like to interject for a moment here and ask you what a proper Linux distribution actually is.
Yeah.
On a phone?
It's Linux. A Linux
kernel. It doesn't matter. What is a proper Linux distribution?
Technically speaking,
there is not Android on it.
I was about to say Android is a proper Linux distribution. I just wish it was fully free.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's Linux. It's not a runtime on it. Over it.
Now, if you want GNU/Linux, that's a different conversation. None of those are appropriate.
I would also like to interject there for a moment too, because it's not GNU/Linux. It is not.
Post-market.
It is Linux.
Post-market is based.
It's not even just Linux.
If I'm not wrong, it's not GNU.
Yeah.
Because it's with Muscle and OpenRC and
I'll let him go.
The BusyBox. It's BusyBox.
BusyBox, yep.
Muscle and OpenRC.
Muscle.
It's based on that, yeah.
Okay, so to continue my interjection here, because we need to correct this right now, and we have to correct it because it is not GNU/Linux, because that statement implies that it is either GNU or Linux. It is both. It is GNU plus Linux.
No, it's just Linux.
I wasn't When I say it's a proper distribution, I wasn't referring with the new thing.
Well, I was just making sure that we
It's not Android.
yeah, I was making sure that we weren't considering Android or Chrome OS, because if you're considering those, you know, they're
I wasn't
Both of those are
only
Linux.
because it's
Linux
not
Chrome
operating
OS, what?
systems.
yeah.
I mean, this
Linux
runs a
is
proper
also
Linux
a
distribution.
Linux-based
New
operating
plus
system.
Linux.
This runs Linux distribution.
Right, exactly. They all run the Linux kernel. So
This runs Linux distribution.
And
the ice maker on my refrigerator runs Linux.
this
Technically,
runs
I mean,
Linux
I mean,
not anymore. To fix it.
my microwave probably runs Linux. So
I need to fix this phone, and I can run Linux like the a Linux distribution based on base Linux kernel on it instead of.
actually, we've been corrected in the YouTube chat. Mohammed says it's actually systemd/GNU/Linux.
Speaking of systemd, when systemd finally starts implementing its own version of the GNU core utils as well as its own kernel, what desktop environment will it use?
GNOME.
Now, yeah, Red Hat employees are behind GNOME and systemd. I mean, that's Flatpak. It's all this one ecosystem. Yeah.
Their own ecosystem basically.
Right.
But you know that the GNU C compiler doesn't work on Android phones or on Android specifically. You know why?
Why?
Because Google decided to create their own C runtime called Bionic. And if you compile anything in C, it won't work.
It won't actually be able to be run on that phone.
But you know what? How do I know that you can statically compile and it will run everywhere? Because if you statically compile GNU C code, or your C code with GNU C compiler, you can run it on your Android phone.
Ultimately, I think the best operating system, getting back to the phone operating system, ultimately, if you want a phone you can use, you probably need to do a free variant of Android. So that's, I mean, just get.
Well, if you wanna buy a serious phone that can do Linux, you should probably consider Sony, because they have their
If you
own.
want a serious phone that can do Linux, if you want a serious phone, get yourself one of those laptops with the LTE modems in it. Install Linux on it. Spin up your own SIP server, and that will be a better experience than what you would use on a phone.
No, I'm serious. If you wanna do a serious phone, like high-end phone with Linux support, you should probably buy Sony. Sony has certain of the devices by Sony are in their Sony Open Devices spec, which allows you to actually install Linux on it without much of a problem. With Sony Open Devices, Sony Open something, and it's actually pretty easy to install proper Linux kernel and Linux-based operating system on it. Something like Ubuntu Phone, something like that. It all depends on what hardware in it, but some of that is under their spec of Sony Open Devices, Sony Open Phones.
Yeah, some phone companies, they don't care what you do with the phone. You can install anything, remove anything. You know, like Apple and their iPhones, you can do anything you want with that phone.
I think
that was a joke.
Phone is actually under that.
Obviously.
Under that spec, but somebody decided to break it and then decided never to fix it. And I'm still angry at myself for doing it.
Okay, guys, I had my fun. I gotta take off now.
All right, man.
Yep.
The best phone I had.
See, don't buy a Pine phone. That was a bad idea. Oh, all right.
The problem with this phone is that it works just fine. It just has one itsy bitsy problem. It's called connector doesn't wanna connect and doesn't charge because of that. So
Really?
while it still worked, I actually to get it to charge, I actually put it under tap. So I poured water in and I plugged it in, so it actually got a connection, because the inside of the connector side, I think is total crap.
Yeah, it probably just had some dirt or something. Wash it away, right? Just put it in the dishwasher, give it a cycle.
Because it is fully waterproof. So I actually, for a joke, tried to start charging. So I did it every time. Like, I actually remember the first time I had it in school. Like it was the middle of winter, and I was eating fruit, but eating tangerine while I was waiting for a bus, and I had sticky hands because of it. I came in class, and I didn't want to have a sticky phone because I was using phone at the same time, and I just got to the tap and just started cleaning it. And one of my classmates, "What the hell are you doing?" "I'm cleaning my phone." "You can do it with water." "Yes, you can, but you can't. You have an iPhone." And I stood up and just went
well,
back to my seat. And
the joke's on you, Big Pod, because he paid 3 times as much for his iPhone as you.
Yeah. Well, at the time, not. At the time, he paid just twice as much. This was 400.
Yeah.
He paid 800 at the time.
That was a cheap iPhone then.
He paid for the last version used that much. Welcome to
because you're not getting anything under 1,000 these days.
Yeah, that was a used phone. The last generation was still $800. Come on.
Yeah,
that
I'm
is great.
so glad I don't have an iPhone. I installed an application for a neighbor on their iPhone, and what a horrible experience that was. That virtual keyboard with my fat fingers trying to get something to enter. You have to enter it about 6 times and backspace and capitalize all with that virtual keyboard. It's an exercise in frustration.
Hey guys, I in the YouTube chat, people are asking if any of you guys have YouTube channels, which I know a couple of you guys do. Can you share the link to your YouTube channel, or just give them, if you post your name, they can click on your name and get to your YouTube channel?
Well, if
because I know Big Pod has one. Ben, do you ever post on yours? I don't know if Ben's got sound today.
Barely.
Yeah.
I don't have a YouTube channel, but I'm hosting the Fedora podcast. Maybe that's relevant.
Yeah, well, let them know in the YouTube chat. Give them the name of the podcast. I'm sure they can find the...
Since most of you won't have the correct permission, just post something post something, because you won't be able to post links unless DT allows you to.
I mean, I just haven't had really much time to do much.
Yeah, if you just post anything, they can click on your name. Just post, "Hey, I have a YouTube channel," and they can click on your name, and they'll get to your channel too.
Yeah.
Because that's really all they need is your name.
Yeah.
What's up, Ben?
I'm on Linux from scratch right now on Katie.
Oh, I knew we were going to have a Linux from scratch or a Gentoo story, so
yeah,
I just wasn't sure which one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on KDE on it right now.
Oh, how's life without a package manager, Ben? Do you miss package management?
Not exactly, because I installed Scratch package on it.
See, if you're going to do that, then why even bother? You should have just installed a proper distribution.
Yeah. Well, it was going to happen eventually.
How long has it been up and running for you?
Little over a month.
Oh, that's good. If it hasn't broken by now, I wouldn't say you're out of the woods, but
yeah, it was not the easiest thing to live with without a package handler.
Yeah, does it manage all the dependencies and everything for you?
No, not exactly.
That's the problem, is the dependencies.
Yeah, well, the package manager I have does actually take care of that, so it's a little bit easier than having to.
Peter in the chat says, I guess Gentoo was not crazy enough for Ben, so Gentoo was starting to become tame. You had to go live a little.
I had to go the next level.
Right.
Actually, KDE has come out with an application to save and restore their settings called ConSave recently, so I gave it a shot. I have a dual monitor system. You can save and restore, you can save and export it to another system, and didn't quite work out for me. I have a dual monitor system, put it over to the other system. The panel on the second monitor disappeared, and on the first monitor I jumbled some settings. I have some buttons on the panel that are created through Kate. You go to your launcher, Kate, and then you say add to the panel, and it's just a template. So I go in and properties and change it to a different application, different icon set. It didn't pick those up. It just restored Kate to where it was before. So it didn't work for me with that part, but it saves your other settings. You save Dolphin, GTK2, GTK3, KDE Globals, KRunner, KConsole, KWinRC, LaTeDoc RC. So I didn't test those, but it goes through all your applications that are installed and saves those as well. So that might be working. I don't know.
Well, I mean, all of those programs should have a plain text config file somewhere. This sounds like it's just a program to manage a set of all the KDE config files. So
yeah, they're installed on your system. Yeah,
it's just a convenient way, to redeploy all those configs.
Yes, exactly. And speaking of configs, Derek, I actually have awesome WM on this too.
How you liking awesome?
It's not too bad. Now the only thing is,
that's not a ringing endorsement there. It's not too bad.
Well, I'm still getting kind of used to it, and I am using MSJ Meshy's config on it because trying to write my own.
Oh,
not gonna happen.
Yeah, and to be honest, unless you really know Lua, that's a tough chore. No, I don't either.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm not spending hours learning a coding language just to get a GUI up. Hell no.
Yeah, I mean, it would be different if you planned on doing any kind of Lua scripting elsewhere. But if you're just learning it for this one thing, why bother? Go rip somebody else's config.
All I did was change his. All I changed was the window button names to all the workspace names to suit my needs, and change the menu icon to an LFS icon. That's it.
Well, that's cool.
And the wallpaper to suit what I wanted it to be, and some of the apps inside the RC Lua, and that was it. That's really all I did.
Well, honestly, Awesome Window Manager is one of the few standalone window managers that actually is pretty good with its default config. Like, it already has a panel and a menu and a run prompt built into it, and the default layouts are So it's one of those that even if you don't know Lua, you can take a few weeks to work out your config, and you still have got a working window manager, unlike some other ones where you have nothing.
And his wasn't that hard to manipulate to how I wanted it. So, it was very simple to mess with. And, I'm one of those proponents who doesn't care what editor I use or anything like that. So,
well, if you're going to start learning Lua, you might want to give NeoVim a try, because they are starting to kind of like how Emacs has eLisp. Everything's going to be written in eLisp, and that's the language for that editor. The NeoVim guys want Lua to be their language, because that was one of the improvements over regular Vim. Is Vim, to write plugins for it, had Vim script. Viml is their own little language, and they wanted a proper language.
Right. I was just going to say, I have dabbled with normal Vim a little bit, but I'm still not wrapping my head around it very clearly. Yeah. So I might try NeoVim and see how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
So,
somebody was saying, Awesome Window Manager requires X11 or Wayland. Real men only use the TTY. Well, don't give Ben
doing that. I would.
Don't give Ben ideas. Yeah, don't put that in Ben's head, because next month I don't know how he's going to connect to the Jitsi jet.
Yeah, I would have to have either Chrome or Firefox in order to do that, and unfortunately, those browsers don't work in a pure text environment.
You can just email us, right? You can probably listen to the audio from the command line, and then when you have a response, just send it via email.
Or I'd have to use my phone, which I would not want to do.
And Umka in the chat is talking about my Xmonad config. Remove 80% of the bells and whistles, and it's going to be just fine. Yeah, that's kind of why I have my config broken down in sections. Like the parts of the config you don't need, just remove those whole entire sections. And I don't need 80% of my config either. Most of it is just for documentation.
Mm-hmm.
The Xmonad is well documented. Like if you go to the Xmonad website or just Haskell.org, they'll tell you everything that's in my config is on Haskell.org. It's just people need one document to go to that kind of explains it all.
Yeah, that's funny. And I do have some custom LFS wallpapers with the GNU Tux on it. So it's pretty funny.
With the GNU Tux? Or are you talking about...
Tux the Penguin, yeah.
Well, you said GNU, so you got the...
No, I mean... I'm sorry, I meant the Linux Penguin.
Okay, I was about to say, because the Penguin is not for GNU, that's the Ox, the actual new.
No, I mean...
Right.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I got that confused. But yeah, regardless, yeah, I've actually got Tux with glasses on and drinking a whiskey as one of the wallpapers.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty... I've got some pretty interesting Linux from scratch wallpapers.
Well, that's cool. I guess there's nowhere else to go to for you, Ben. This is it for you and Linux.
I guess so. I've reached my limit of distro jumping.
Well, next month you'll be joining us from OpenBSD. I'm already prepared for it. So,
now you're giving me ideas.
I hope Jitsi works on BSD. We'll find out.
Huh.
I don't know. But yeah, that's going to have to go on my HP ProBook laptop because this laptop its Wi-Fi doesn't support BSD.
Mm-hmm.
And someone in the chat, lifeless web user, is Qtile still not on Ubuntu 20? I'm assuming he's talking about 2004, 20. I don't know. The problem with stable distributions is Python gets updated a lot, and also Qtile is also under pretty heavy. They've got a lot of developers, and they do push out new versions, sometimes major version updates.
Yeah, they do.
So yeah, that may be why Debian and Ubuntu don't even have it packaged.
Yeah, that could be it. I don't know if Debian has it.
Yeah, it's a Debian thing because
if Debian doesn't have it, then Ubuntu there is a big chance it won't have it because there then must be a person specifically doing it.
And I can tell you, even if Debian and Ubuntu LTS had it, there's no way you could go grab my config and make it work because the new libraries, new syntax, it's just, right. They're going to be 2 or 3 versions of Qtile behind anyway, even if they had it on those. So you couldn't use my config. So I'm just warning people now, don't go grab my Qtile config unless you're on an up-to-date distribution that has the latest.
There hasn't been in Qtile in Debian for the last 3 big releases or 2 big releases plus the next one and the seed. There is no Qtile in anything.
Yeah. The latest version of Qtile is 0.17. So anything previous to 0.17, I know my config is not going to work. It's going to break on you. So.
And I just screwed that up.
And specifically for Ubuntu, let me check now on all suites.
Now, you should be able to, I'm assuming you could install Qtile through pip, couldn't you?
I just tried that and it failed on me.
It failed?
Tried it
Yeah.
3.9. I got a bunch of...
Well, Qtile is packaged in 1804, but not later. That could be, let me see.
Yeah, I know it was packaged in 1804 because I ran Ubuntu 1804 and was a Qtile user when I was running that. Yeah. Matter of fact, that's what I started the YouTube channel on. I was running Ubuntu 1804 LTS, and I was using OpenBox and Qtile on that.
Yeah, that is because maintainers stopped maintaining it for Ubuntu.
Yeah.
As it appears.
It's probably a lot of work maintaining something like that. That's something that changes all the time, and Python's always changing.
Well, it won't actually be that much because it is Ubuntu.
Yeah. I wonder, couldn't they just snap the desktop environment? Just snap Qtile.
No.
You can't do that?
Very hardly because of certain limitations that are a part of how snaps work.
Well, I never thought I'd hear the day Big Pod said there's limitations to snaps.
it probably wouldn't work unless there were changes to how it worked. But that is the limitations that come are from the way system is built and all that for its containerization system.
I installed
that it's using.
Python, and I've installed about 30 pip installs of my own, which generated about another 60 that they generated. But the thing that surprised me is how often everything gets updated. It's as bad as Arch. It's as bad as Arch, if not worse. I every day I come up, there's something.
No, it's exactly like Arch, really, because Arch is just always pushing that stuff out.
And the thing is, it has. I've got about 20 of them, maybe 5 or 6 of them. You can't update because they're fixed dependencies. Something wants a specific version. So I'm just waiting for the day when another package wants a later version and they can't get it because this one's is pinned to this version on it. And they don't tell you which one's which. You have to keep a mental note of which ones you can't update. I've got 5 or 6 I've written down and said don't update these, but I can update the other ones. So that's been the one pain I have with IPython, because I copy that one system over the whole folder with everything in it from one computer to another, and I'm running identical systems. So I have to, and it's about 1.5 gigs because of all these package installs that I have to copy from one system to another, and I have to keep in sync every 2 weeks. I have to copy that stuff over to keep them all in sync. So that's the one downside to this system.
Well, on my system, I have 200 updates almost every day just for Haskell packages. Because Haskell is constantly updating all the time, every day. I do it like a 250, 300 package update every day, and more than 200 of those are just, these very small Haskell libraries. It's not like it takes a long time, but I know some people, when they see my videos, and if I'm like whatever bar I'm using, I'll usually have an update widget. Like, man, why do you have 350 updates? Haskell. That's all it is. It's just Haskell every day.
Whoops.
But I have a bloated system. It sounds like Murray has a bloated system. If we all just lived on DWM, and we wouldn't have all these packages and updates. We just went the full suckless route. You're laughing, Ben, but on Linux from scratch, it would probably make sense for you to actually do that.
I don't know how the heck to use DWM, Derek.
Awesome is a fork of DWM.
Yes, but I tried DWM once. I couldn't figure out how the heck to even launch a program.
Well, I mean, you have to go into it and know some of the default key bindings. Also,
I haven't learned those yet, dude.
Also, if it didn't manage the dependencies right, as far as the default config, DWM expects Xterm to be installed. It is installed. It expects dmenu to be installed.
I don't know if I have that. Let me check.
Because if you don't have Xterm and dmenu already installed, you can't do anything in DWM, because the default key bindings for opening a terminal is actually Xterm, and the default prompt is supposed to be dmenu. And if you didn't install those,
I do have Xterm, but I don't have dmenu in my system. Because I just did I'm using Scratch package from Venom Linux.
And you don't even have to worry about a package manager for the suckless thing. You just go grab the builds, do a sudo make install, boom, you're done.
Yeah, well, I'm just grabbing dmenu right now. But the thing is, I have no blasted clue how the heck to configure DWM off the top of my head.
It's not too hard. As far as when you grab the source codes for them, there will be a file called config.def.h.
Right. I'm just going to grab someone else's because I don't want to have to mess with
you just edit that file to make changes.
Okay.
And then when you config,
I might just start with meshes and then just hack onto it how I want. So.
The thing is, when you edit the config.def.h and save it, then you need to delete config.h, the one that already existed. Remove that, then do sudo make install, and the new.
Get errors. Because he's got a suckless config on his GitHub, and I'm just going to hack onto that and see how far I get.
But that's probably something. the way I would go if I was trying to limit the number of packages on a system, if for some reason I was crazy and ran Linux from scratch, that's kind of what I just manage those suckless packages and just try to use those. You can even use Surf for the browser if you don't want to compile it. Well, you'd still have to. You need WebKit still compiled, but
oh, good God!
Well, I mean, what can you do? It's a browser.
Yeah,
you could use links in the terminal, but at some point you're gonna want a real browser.
I do have Firefox bins, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah, actually, AppImages, do they work on Linux from scratch?
I haven't tried it, but
because all the major browsers have an AppImage, and if it'll work, then that'll save you from even needing to download.
Yeah, that would probably save a chunk of time, yeah. And it looks like he's using Alacrity or ST inside his
ST would be the terminal you'd probably want to use because you wouldn't have to compile. I mean, ST compiles in seconds. Alacrity is going to take you an hour to compile, depending on your hardware.
Well, I've got 16 gigs of RAM and a Ryzen laptop.
No, it'll probably compile in 5-10 minutes. Then you Alacrity might work for you, but you're going to have a ton of Rust stuff on your. You already got Rust programs installed.
Yeah. I'll just probably go with ST like he's got here because I mean ST. Whew.
And who was asking me about the Albert launcher? Somebody was asking about in the chat here. Have you tried Albert? I have. I don't know if I've made a video about it though.
What is it?
Albert.
I was trying it this last week with i3, and it works pretty well.
Yeah, I've tried a bunch of different run launchers at one time or another in Linux, and I know I've tried it. I may have even made a video about it. I'd have to look it up. I know I did something about. Yeah, I've done a video about the Albert launcher. So I forget. I've done nearly 1,000 videos. Sometimes I've done Albert. I've done ULauncher. Of course, I've done plenty of stuff with Rofi, and a billion videos about dmenu. So
I was trying both Albert and ULauncher, but I think Albert have more functionality.
Yeah, I remember liking both. I thought both of them were neat programs. In the past, I've also played with. There was an old launcher called Synapse. Years ago.
Yeah,
I used it.
Classics.
Yeah. And all of those are fine.
I remember I bumped into Synapse because I was recently changing from Windows to Linux like in 2002 or something like that. And it was one of the classic launchers because I even use it in Windows.
Yeah. The one thing about some of those launchers, though, they are a little slower than I would like because, a lot of times when I know exactly the program I'm going to launch, I'm just going to type 2 or 3 letters, hit enter as fast as I can. And some of those things have a little bit of lag because they're trying to load images, unfortunately, where something like dmenu is just lightning fast. As fast as I can type, it can handle it. So
it just text.
Right. So that's the only downside with some of the graphical launchers. Now, for a lot of computer users like grandma, she's going to like the graphical kind of launchers with the icons. It's going to be obvious what the program is. Where a lot of times I'm not searching for a program. I'm just trying to launch it. So
I usually have an OD menu, but the desktop variant menu, the variant of the menu, I think it's called something like the menu dash desktop or something like that. And one graphical because the graphical one gave me a little more Unix port-like.
Yeah. Well, that's what most people, why you'd want it. It looks nicer, and typically they're going to have an icon, which will help for discoverability if you're not sure what you're looking for. Sometimes it'll also have the program name and the generic description of the program on some of those launchers. That's kind of nice to have, again, if you don't know what you're looking for.
Also, I was going to ask you if you have some kind of I don't remember how it's called, something like cheat sheet when you have all the key bindings you use, the combination. Because I was trying a program that is embedded in Regolith Linux,
Mhm.
when you can load the config file and it gives you a nice window with all the key maps.
Yeah. Some window managers do that by default. So Regolith, they're using i3. Awesome Window Manager, it's built into Awesome Window Manager. If Ben is using Awesome right now, I believe if you just hold the super key, or maybe it's super plus another key, but it'll actually, every key binding in his config, it'll go and grep out those key bindings and it'll show him all of his key bindings. Awesome's really neat like that. I think Awesome was the one that invented that, and other window managers are trying to implement it because it's such a neat feature. Unfortunately, most of them haven't implemented it yet. Qtile is trying to. Like, I can go to a command line and print out all of my Qtile key bindings using a command, but they don't have a nice window that pops up that's well organized the way Awesome does it. But you could, with a little bit of scripting, you could actually, you could have a window pop up that displays all of your key bindings if you wanted to script it yourself. Not everybody's going to want to do that, though. What I would do is, because if you're in a tiling window manager especially, you're probably editing that config on a somewhat regular basis. Have a hotkey to bring up the config. And then, just pull up your config in your editor, and then you can see all your key bindings. Like if you forget a key binding.
I'm looking at this guy's, whatchamacallit, his config for DWM. Eric, he's got Qt browser as one of the programs on his keybinds.
Yeah.
Couldn't you assign XDG open and then give it a URL where everything is defined, or the home page or something, and then assign that to function key, and it would bring up the reference in the web browser?
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could just use the XDG.
Open, yeah. HTTP, whatever.
Because all of that should be assigned. Assuming it's assigned. If it wasn't, then I guess that would be an issue.
Or if you could even download the file on your computer and reference it as a file and open it.
What would be neat is, if I wanted to take the time to script this, if I was wanted to have a nice graphical way to look at my key bindings, is to go through my config, and then maybe through Pandoc, since I have Haskell installed anyway. Everybody should be using Pandoc. Man, convert that to a PDF and then have it launch in your PDF viewer.
Yeah, it looks like I'm going to be compiling Qt.
Yeah, Qt browser uses the Chromium engine, so.
Yeah, that'll probably take a bit.
It'll take all day, so.
Freaking hell.
It'll take all day. That's literally.
So I link it in the chat the Remontire program that is using Regolith. I think it's pretty neat. It's lightweight, and you can put it. You can pass it any config file to render the key bindings.
Yeah.
Also, before I go, because I have to go right now, I want to remember that Fedora is releasing a spin with i3. So if you want to try it, it's beta now.
Yeah. I'm
kind of the father of it, so I'm very proud that the team will be able to put it out. It's a Fedora distribution that have only 1.4 gigabyte of in the ISO. So
well, I tell you what, when you guys have a release and you want me to take a look at it, let me know. Send me a message.
Well, it's already in the beta. If you go to the spins.fedora.project/release, pre-release, you're going to find the ISO.
Yeah.
Try it? It's pretty nice.
You say it's in beta? I'd rather wait for the, I guess the official release if you're gonna have one.
In 2 or 3 more weeks.
Right. Because I know Fedora is gonna have their releases anyway. So yeah, just let me know. Then just remind me. I'll try to remember I'll try to write it down here in a minute on my little notepad that I keep.
I'll let you know.
Yeah. I need to take a look at Fedora anyway, and I don't mind taking a look at a Tiling Window Manager edition. I don't do much with i3. So it's good to check it out every now and then too.
Yeah. Well, see you guys.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Yeah.
Okay, this is weird. So it's looking for a DWM.desktop and it's not finding.
You got to create it yourself, Ben. Yeah, that's the thing with DWMs. Suckless guys, they don't create desktop files. You do that, Ben. I have one. If you want to go grab it from my GitLab, look for my build of DWM and just grab my .desktop file that I think I packed.
Okay, yeah, I'll just do that. Thanks.
Yeah, that if you don't want to write your own, let me make sure that because I know it's part of my Arch build. Because
gotcha.
Otherwise people would install my build and they wouldn't have the .desktop file, so I created it for.
Yeah, that
for
would
you.
be kind of a drag.
Yeah, I got it right here. Here, I'll put the link in the chat here, and then you can just copy and paste it into your editor.
Hey, Derek. How many hours did you spend organizing your dot files to have the same key bindings in all? Exactly, highly managed Windows. So I mean, I saw your i3 config file.
Yeah.
I saw your BT something config file. I know about your another.
It's not perfect. There are some differences between. I still need to go and clean up some of those, especially the ones that I don't live in all the time, like i3 and BSPWM. These are not window managers I spend a lot of time in because I don't care for them. But so their configs may be a little different, but like Awesome, Xmonad, Qtile, DWM, I know those four. I've tried to make those as similar as possible, where the same kind of functions have the same key bindings. That helps me live in each of them. Like if I want to switch one day, it's not like I have to learn a different set of key bindings.
Yeah.
So it's mainly for me, but also for people checking out the configs. If you guys are hopping and you're using my configs, what I did is I used DWM as kind of the standard for, and Xmonad. Xmonad kind of uses the same DWM-like key bindings. So I went with mostly their defaults. I changed some things, but it was mostly what you get out of the box with DWM and Xmonad. And then I tried to make the rest of them fit that same pattern.
Okay. In those days, I tried to make functional the color shift, I think, in my BSD. In my BSD machine too. Yeah, because in Arc, in Debian, and I let me see, I tested color shift like in 20 distros, and Linux works, and BSD doesn't at this moment.
Yeah, I can't help you with,
I
with BSD. Yeah,
don't worry, man.
I mean, I like playing with some of the BSDs occasionally on my test laptops and NVMs. I checked out the latest release of Nomad BSD. I've had it installed in a VM for 2 weeks. I didn't do anything on video with it, although I've done videos about Nomad before. But yeah, they're neat to play with, but putting it on a real machine that you have to get work done on,
it's
not.
It's more server related. So
right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Not front end or not just a desktop for everybody. It's just a server.
And I know people love to talk about how the Linux kernel is bloated, but there's a reason it's bloated. Everything works with the Linux kernel, right? You never plug in any kind of equipment and it doesn't work. But those same people would complain if the Linux kernel was very slim and then all their hardware didn't work. Then they complain Linux is garbage. It's like...
Nvidia people hates sometimes Linux for that reason.
Yeah. Well, Nvidia is a special case.
Exactly, it's a special case. Even Linux turbos say that.
Nvidia is a pain in the ass.
Exactly, it has a ton of love for them.
Well, Intel and AMD are doing good things with the kernel, so.
Yeah.
So it's a separate topic here for a sec. I'm using Proxmox, and it's come out Debian 10. They've got a new version, came out with version 6 recently. So I downloaded it, burned it to a thumb drive, and installed it. And it changed the bootloader from Grub to systemd boot. And what a big difference it makes. the boot time is a fraction of what it was with Grub,
Mhm.
and it's a suckless type of thing. It comes up with a black screen, 3 entries in the middle, shows up for 2 seconds, and then it starts loading, and everything's done in parallel, so the boot time is lightning fast. I'm surprised how fast it is and how simple it works. And the other thing I was surprised about is that systemd boot is supposed to be better for multi-booting, because every operating system has its own config file, and Grub, everything is in one Grub config file, all the operating systems doing the menu entries. So apparently, I don't know how you would do it as an end user, but technically it's superior to the way that Grub does it.
Yeah, I've always used Grub, so I've never, but I do like the fact that the bootloader can't be wiped out as easily with the systemd boot, because if you're dual booting or triple booting, especially Windows, you know how Windows likes to booger up your Grub sometimes.
Oh, and Ubuntu did it for me too, and Manjaro, or they ignore it or something. They put it in the wrong place, the number in the wrong place, and you never see it in the menu.
Oh, it got to the point for a while there, if I needed to dual boot or triple boot or something, what I would do is I installed Grub on every single device, all the partitions. Let's put it everywhere, so there's no chance of not finding it. So.
Yeah. I'll be right back, guys. I'm going to jump over to the DWM. I'll be right back.
Oh, okay. See, this is what we like. He does this live.
Okay.
This is extreme window manager hopping right here.
Hopefully this doesn't end up bad.
No, if you did a sudo make install and it compiled correctly, it
works.
Yeah. But systemd boot, I don't know. You're going to trigger a lot of people talking about systemd boot, Murray, because
it came with the new version that it's an automatic install. It's so minimalistic. It's a suckless type of boot manager in there. So I'm a big fan of it now.
Yeah, well, I'm not one of those people that trash systemd as far as, it's evil and all of that. Obviously, most distributions use it. I use it. I mean, I like the way it starts and stops services. I like systemd timers and it's bloat. You should use cron jobs like a normal person. You should just use shell scripting to start all your services. I was like, yeah, that's going backwards. Let's go forwards a little bit, guys.
So I'm getting a new monitor tomorrow. I have 2 dual monitors, 1900 by 1280, that are great for programming.
Cool.
One of them's faded. I bought them used. One of them's faded, so I need a replacement. So I've got a 24-inch 1440p monitor, and the thing about that is the font's going to be too small. From what I read, they scale it up to 1.25, and it looks so. But the thing is, it's a dual monitor, so I've got a 1280. When you scale up, you can't scale one monitor. You have to scale both on it, and it's X11 restriction. So I'm thinking it's going to look fine on the new monitor, but the old monitor is going to be too large. So I'm going to wait and see what happens with that.
Yeah.
But somebody had it working in Wayland. They had individual scaling on the monitors. Wasn't perfect, but they got it to work. But X11 is showing its age a bit there, I guess, not being able to do it individually.
Yeah, I've thought about getting some new monitors. The monitors I've had them for 6-7 years now. The problem is it's 3 monitors, and I would want to get 3 of exactly the because kind of like you're running into the problem where you already have a monitor and you're just going to add a new one to it unless they're the same. Yeah, it's a headache. I'm going to get 3 identical monitors, and
well, I got it through Amazon Prime, so if it doesn't work, I can take it back.
Right, just return it.
The other thing is it's in Canada, and the price was $309 Canadian. And in the States on Amazon, it's $289. So if you just did the exchange rate, it should be $365 just for the exchange up here. So I'm getting a really good deal in comparison from what other monitors cost. So it's going to be worth trying to see 24-inch 1440, see if it's too small or not.
Somebody in the chat is Nvidia refused for years to support FreeSync. Nvidia is a competent company with bad morals. Well, a company is not a person, so I wouldn't say a company has bad morals. There's people that maybe run the company, but let's not label everybody like the people that work for Nvidia as having bad morals. But I get the point there.
Well, they do have their own version of FreeSync called G-Sync. So why would they need to support FreeSync in reality?
But isn't that part of the not invented here syndrome that so many companies have? It's like, we can't use somebody else's. We're going to invent our own. It's proprietary, lock-in is what these companies are trying to do. And that's really what Nvidia has been trying to do for years, is they're really all in on being this proprietary company, having this proprietary technology that only works with them. And that's why they can't work with the Linux kernel. I mean, there's nothing open about Nvidia.
Nothing.
Yeah. They're one of the last ones holding on to that philosophy, that old school closed source proprietary. Even Microsoft has given up that game, right? Even Microsoft knows people want open source. People want open hardware. That's the future. Anybody that works with computers can see that's where it's going. And eventually, Nvidia is going to have to move that direction. They're just a little slow in moving that direction. I think one day they'll probably, I don't know if they will open source the drivers the way we want them to, but they'll do one of these ridiculous code dumps where here's a bajillion lines of code, you guys figure it out, which I hate when companies do that. I would rather them actually properly open source something where here's the open source driver that actually works. We'll even tell you all about it and help you develop the thing. But for now, I'm happy on AMD.
Yeah, and speaking of Nvidia, so basically I'm going to spend a number, maybe 75 or 80% of their market is gaming, obviously.
Oh yeah, well, or crypto mining.
No.
But not just gaming, because I got my Quadros, so I know they have a market for producers.
Right.
That is another market. Yeah. But the biggest market is I thought is gaming. Gaming still in Windows.
Now, don't underestimate the crypto mining.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah, there's millions and millions of Nvidia cards out there that are mining for Bitcoin right now.
Yeah.
So
there is actually too many miners, and it's too much and everything.
But speaking about proprietary software for mine coining, proprietary software matter. Is that matters? I mean, for a driver, for the purpose of the graphic card as an Nvidia, for a driver, for a gaming, and for a producer, I got the idea. But for a mining,
well, you have a point there. You have a point there. For example, most of what people are doing with these cards, do they really care about open source? Probably not. Like if you're a gamer, why would you care? Because all of your games are proprietary. If you're on Steam, that's a proprietary service. So why are you going to sit there and complain about your video card? You wouldn't.
Exactly.
And to be honest, I wouldn't either. That's why I said if I had an Nvidia card, I would run the proprietary driver, because you have to at that point. And if I had an expensive piece of hardware, I'm not going to purposely cripple my piece of hardware just for ideological reasons. Like I'm not going to put the proprietary driver on your system and get the most out of it. Get the most bang for your buck in that case.
And the other, go ahead.
The other big thing for Nvidia, probably bigger than gaming, at least in the number, how much money is the scientific workloads. But those actually don't care about where it is proprietary open source. They don't care even less than gamers.
No, because their line of
To them,
their field, they don't.
it doesn't matter. They just
Yeah.
want it to work. They want to do AI. They want to do
Right.
machine learning, and that's about it. They don't, even if they do care. Nvidia is so much better, so they don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of vendors, CUDA cores, for example, okay, CUDA cores, and what? And Vulkan, I think the AMD has the Vulkan something. This is completely different animal. So yeah, because you have AMD in the market, so you can play without proprietary drivers because AMD is more open and has an open source. So
yeah,
but
I mean AMD has. They still have proprietary drivers out there too, but nobody really uses them because the open source drivers are as good or better.
Exactly.
Which, I mean, that's in a lot of cases, it's really the quality of the driver that has dictated these people what they use. They don't really care about open source or proprietary, which is the better driver. For AMD, that's the open one. For Nvidia, is the proprietary one. So. All right, guys. Well, we just got a couple of minutes here till the top of the hour, so we're going to kill the stream here in a minute, but I did want to give everybody that's still here a minute for our last word. So if you got anything you want to share before the end of the stream, give us a last word here. Let's start with Sesquivils. Is that your name?
Just Sergey.
Sergey. Okay.
Yeah. That is my.
I know not everybody wants to put their name out there, but I'm sure I butchered the username there, the screen name.
So I don't know. So I'm enjoying this first chat with you guys. I'm not a YouTuber producer. I'm more a security engineer. So actually, I work every day in Linux at security projects. So, but in my personal life, I enjoy distro hopping and I enjoy learn about.
When you say you work in security, what do you do? Is it like you do any kind of penetration testing, or what do you?
No, more in infrastructure work about security.
I got you. Okay.
MySQL, Cell, and etc. Stuff like that. Yeah.
You're making sure you don't get any of those nasty injections and all of that in your databases.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that is why I'm so familiar with Linux, right? Mm-hmm. But one thing is Linux for business, and another thing is Linux for your joy. Okay. So and the second is I'm based on Costa Rica, so that is why maybe I got some images qualities, but I got one mix of internet. But at the end of the day, geographical.
What's the weather like down there?
Sunny, very very sunny. Some windy, sunny, and maybe 27 degrees. So in Fahrenheit, I didn't remember.
Yeah, that probably in the 80s. What is 27 degrees? Yeah. It's comfortable. Yeah, it's nice weather.
Yeah, it's comfortable.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
Well, without the wind or without wind, it's hot. It's a humid. But if you have some wind, it's okay. It's pretty much.
Yeah, I get the humidity too. So, although it's unusually cool here today. Yesterday it was in the 80s here. Fahrenheit, and today I think it's like 65 degrees outside right now. It's a little cool, not cold, but cool.
It's okay. You can spend you can live in that temperature. Okay, and right. I'm really enjoy this session. So I hope the next month I'm going to join us guys to chat again.
All right. Well, thanks, Sergey. Big Pod, you got something for us, sir?
Not much.
Yeah.
See you next month.
All right.
Yeah.
Looks like Big Pod's got some work to do today. Murray, what you got planned today?
Well, last night I installed and tried Zero Tier. I don't know if anyone's heard of it.
Zero Tier, no?
No.
Virtual VPN. It lets you SSH to your computer from anywhere. And I installed it on my laptop, and I could take the laptop to the coffee shop and SSH just like I was on a local network. It's open source, it's free, it's easy to use, and I could email Derek, say, my ID, and he could download the client and install the ID on his system, and then I could give him authorization to SSH into my computer way over from, Orleans, somewhere around New Orleans on it. So it's kind of good. I just did it yesterday, and I've only done SSH. I'm not sure what else you can do besides SSH.
I don't know. I'm looking at the Arch repo. There's a package for zero tier in the Arch repo.
Yeah.
So
there's an administrative web page where you go in and authorize the users to do it. They install the client on the system, and once it's installed, it'll appear on the administrative page, and there's a checkbox saying yes, you can connect.
Oh, cool.
And then you can do it anywhere, and it uses UDP hole punching, so it's very fast apparently as well.
There is a zero tier Arch wiki page too. Oh,
yep.
Wow.
Zero tier. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm just starting with it. So far so good.
Huh.
Well,
Okay.
Might be something worth checking out. All right, Murray. Appreciate that.
Thank you for that. I'm going to check it too.
All right, and my last word, of course, is thanking you guys for hanging out with me here on the chat. Of course, we had a bunch of folks here earlier that didn't make it to the end. I want to thank each and every one of those folks as well for hanging out with us. You guys that are hanging out in the YouTube chat, your questions and comments are always great too. Thanks, guys. And of course, I need to thank all the patrons that couldn't be here. So I'm going to show some names on the screen. And these are all the patrons. I want to sincerely thank each and every one of those ladies and gentlemen for helping support me doing what I do. And other than that, let's all wave bye to YouTube.